everybody for coming out today. First and foremost, can we give a round of applause for Haile Gerima for this amazing music. Also, secondly, I want to say thank you for Abed, thank you for Jonathan in the back, thank you for the whole Sankofa team for making this event possible, for the venue, for the movie, for everything. So let's clap it up for them as well. And then finally, I want to say thank you for everybody coming out to this event. Without you guys, this event couldn't have been possible. So one round of applause for yourselves. So how this is going to happen is we're going to have a short question and answer session. I'm going to be asking a few questions. Maybe I'm going to ask 5 questions, 6 questions, and then we're going to go to the audience to ask any questions. So I did prepare a few questions. So, all right, let's start it off with just watching this movie. We didn't have any existing footage of the Battle of Adwa. We didn't have any photos, any videos. So you had to use a blend of, archival materials. You used traditional paintings, used some reenactments of the event. So my question to you is, how did you decide on this visual style? And what were some of the most difficult choices that you had to make in deciding the style?
First, thank you for organizing, and I'm very thankful first. So as I talk further, I may not be grateful. So let's get it right first. I am very grateful you guys organized it. And I'm very happy to have shared it with you guys, but that's the difficult part. This in 1896 there was no film shooting, so that itself is very difficult. I would have liked to do a dramatic rendition of this, but who would finance it? Europeans or Europe? This is not their history, especially if you don't have them as a heroic entry character. They would not be interested, and that is even if they're interested at all. So that is out. So I always wanted to make a film, a drama of the Emperor Menelik and Aitu. The two of them, for me, attracted me in this history. Although Adwa has always, even without me knowing its fullest meaning, it has always been around, because my fathers fought the Italians the second time they came, 1935. So Adwa certainly is in the household. So it's difficult, but I was lucky to find, for example, 1909, Empress Taitu had commissioned a painter who saw the war, who was an eyewitness and a painter in the kingdom of Asehons. So he painted 1909 to commemorate Adwa, the Battle of Adwa. He was commissioned to paint. And that commission I know existed, but in a very ironic way, Ethiopians have a miniature of it, but the painting is from that door to here, and it is in Rome. And how did it go there? So I had to go fight and struggle with Italians to film my own ancestors' painting. This is Africa. That's the reality we have to go from. So even that, the painting, they wouldn't even let me take it down to really have a good camera position to shoot it. I had planned a whole lot of, trying to animate that painting with fog machine, etc. It didn't happen. So, but still, I finally, got the right to film it. I filmed it. And the others are pictures, and what many people, including us Ethiopians, don't know is this is the most, covered battle. Even if they did not, like the New York Times. If you saw there was a New York Times article. They would say they won, but it's like barbarians winning. They would not think of us as having a war experience of battle that went within our own psychological makeup. And so the Europeans would say, oh, the Italians got defeated in the historical documentation because they didn't know they were lost in the direction. It was not true. And that is just to say how dare they were defeated, because the Europeans took it personal. In fact, until Mussolini comes into town in history, the Italians were beginning to be looked down because they lost for Ethiopians. And there's a lot of writing about how do you lose for a black race issue. And they were, in fact, part of the psychological aspect of the Italian fascism that was spearheaded by Mussolini, Graziani, etc. They come out of this burden of humiliation. And in my next film, for example, I was able to get him talking about the 40 years shame of this, and many Italians speak about that. And so, for me, even some of the painting you saw of Menelik was done by well-known European artists. Okay, so they were painted, they were photographed. The material is there, but to me it's coalescing it together to help me tell a story without even the economic power of reenactment, to do reenactment. In fact, I'll tell you this since we're here. During that period, the 100 years anniversary, the professor who speaks in English, Professor Andreas, he organized a reenactment at the mountain of Adwa, and they ordered period rifles and weapons from Yugoslavia and other places. And the Italian government, they protested not to have their reenactment. And this is in 1996. They protested, and the Mullis government stopped it. And so this is again the battle to recoup our memory, our history is not simple, it's not easy. When you put it like this together, it's very easy to really not see what, especially you guys, the future generation, would face in appropriating or having the right to use this visual images, even the one in 1935, which is very well documented. It's taken me 30 years to finish it. I'm almost finished it. It's the end of it now. But it's a battle. So for me, pictures, photographs, soundtrack, I have to, do what I have to do. And then you or your friends, your cohorts would do a dramatic story. And then you'll use my film for research. Why not?
Yes, thank you for that response. You touched upon a few other questions that I have prepared for you. So for example, one of the things that you showed in the movie was Empress Taitu's role in the Battle of Adwa. You took the time to highlight that. But over the course of history, most of what she did has been overlooked because of, and most of the credit goes to Aze Menelik II. Why do you think that most of what she did is being overlooked?
Well, it's not only taking the Haitu, even Menelik. I don't know what your base of that information. For me, I think during the time of Emperor Haile Selassie, the history of Ethiopia was not predisposed to young people like me. In fact, I attribute that to our confusion because our history, we were studying American history. We were, as the new empire. We were studying British history, French history, and in some cases, even when I went to Gerima High School, the classes were the history class I took was Indian, and I remember Chandragupta 1, Chandragupta 2, Chandragupta 3. And I was in India a few years ago, and I had a keynote speech, and I told them that they were the British mouthpiece to colonize me, and that's how the British work. A lot of the Ethiopian teachers of my age come from Sudan, Egypt, India, and Ethiopians who have been cultivated by the British mindset. And so the English, the very language itself became an empire. So during that period, Haile Selassie, did not, it's not only him, the elite of his period did not make Ethiopian young people really study the history of their past. And that is, I think, why everything he worked also collapsed with it. In the military junta, up to now, Ethiopia is a country of drunkard episode. So, to me, I think when you don't know your history, you're liable to destroy the object of even your care for the country. And so, it is not only Tege Aitu, but I think Ethiopian history is not known by Ethiopians, and that is the tragedy.
Thank you for that response. I completely agree with you. Like for me, for example, just speaking the language itself, right? Speaking Amharic, some people, they ask me, "Amarኛ ታወራለህ?" I tell them, "ከፈለጋችሁ አስተምራችኋለሁ." Like something like that. And all of this I attribute it to my parents, ወላጆቼ እንዳሳደጉኝ ነው, so I can say that. So this is to ask you, what do you think would have happened if Ethiopia's victory at Adwa had not been remembered?
Well, remembered?
Yes, like.
Oh, that's what you see now.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy Ethiopia. That's what we have. We Ethiopians now. Don't be hurt or be mad at me, but we Ethiopians, regardless of this dinosaur history, we are a tragic country. We take, instead of making young people know their history and make them a history maker, to have their own right to make history in the time they lived, we send them to war to die. Yeah. Thousands of them die every 15, 20 years for a stupid war that this imagine-less or bankrupt elite Ethiopians that only see in terms of sending young people to war. So to me, Ethiopia is a crazy place because when you don't know your history, that's what happens. It's not only Adwa. Ethiopia is a very, very interesting country with all the contradictions, the good, the bad, the ugly. Ethiopia has a very, very serious historical document that needs young people to process it and capture their own moment to be history makers, not spectators of American bullshit. This is the problem. We have a tradition to be history makers, not spectators. But we are spectators, imitators, even at that, grotesque imitators.
Thank you for that. One thing that we saw at the end of this movie was it will be to be continued, like a part 2 type of series. I did a little bit of research. I saw what Sankofa was doing on their website, and it was the movie called Black Lions, Roman Wolves. And this explores the Italian invasion of Ethiopia in the 1930s. I want to give you a chance to talk about it. And how does this new film build on Adwa? And what do you hope that audiences can take away from it?
Well, when I started Adwa, uh, because of resources, I only had a German co-production, or I don't know, another country that joined me, but the budget limited, and my idea was to make a film about Adwa and then go into the 1935 fascist Italian occupation of Ethiopia. And so, but it was like a twin jointed birthing, and I had to separate the two stories. They didn't go well because this one is just really the introduction of this whole conflict. And so the Black Lions is coming out of this because I was also going around interviewing Ethiopians who were dying like flies, who fought the Italians in 1935, including my father. So I was going around filming, although my father had gone. I have filmed him to some extent, but still not enough that that would have helped a lot in the making of that film. So anyway, I interviewed a lot of, going different parts of Ethiopia, interviewed guerrilla fighters especially, and historians, and then that one has newsreel footages because Italy did document everything. Although there are things I cannot access, they are hiding them. Although they exist, but still there's newsreel footage of the actual invasion. And so, for me, I wanted to do a film called The Children of Adwa 40 years later. And then even that title became a subtitle, because I found out in the process of making the film, the destruction of Ethiopian history was part and parcel of this invasion or incursion. And so Black Lions is the lion symbol of the Ethiopian kingdom, and then the Roman wolves, the she-wolf also of the Roman, those conflict became more prominent for me. So I called it as as a major title, Black Lions, Roman Wolves, but they have subtitles under that. It's 5 parts. It breaks down to give what I feel justice to the history, and to not only kings but the ordinary Ethiopians who fought without salary, without ration, without transportation, just on the basis of the fact that their independence meant so much to them. They went to war, some returned, some never, some perished. And I was born immediately, not right away, but immediately after the Italians were defeated out of Ethiopia by Ethiopians. Even that, what is tragic is the fact that we Ethiopians allowed the British to take over our history. They rewrote the chapter. Even the Africans, for example, who came to fight with the British, usually there would be 3 British and 1,000 Nigerians, or 20,000 Nigerians, or 10,000 Sudanese, but 3 British boys, or South African white boys, or Australian white boys. So Ethiopians only know the whites who were in the horse, not the foot soldiers of Africa who came to die for Ethiopia. So there is this whole battle going on, and the books have been written for making this 3 white people of this, that, and this and that be the ones who defeated Italians, not the Ethiopians who dispensed the guerrilla warfare, traditional guerrilla warfare that Ethiopians are known for. And so, to me, the fact that you have, I don't know if but there's Churchill Godana. You know about that? But Churchill is like, he wanted Ethiopia to be colonized. But Ethiopians don't. They just thankfully name a street for him. And this confusion, this history confusion is my problem. So anyway, I want to make sure people, like you would know, like for example, 5,000 Sikh Indians died in the Battle of Karan. We don't know. And so many Sudanese died in the Charaka battle in Gojam, fighting on behalf of Ethiopia. But we only just give tribute to the 3 white folks.
Yes, thank you for that response. I know in the making of Adwa, like oral tradition played a big role, like word of mouth. You had to go out there and get the testimonies yourself. So I wanted to ask you, can you share with us today one of the more profound or more interesting testimonies that you received?
I don't know if it's profound, my brother. My love, there's nothing profound. But I would say, I think like the first, this old man I really wanted to interview as I was going towards Adwa. He was aging, and he said, okay, maybe in the afternoon. His son told me to come back in the house. He was unable to give me an interview because he doesn't trust his age. He's old, and the son says, can you come inside and ask him, maybe if he hears your voice, he would say okay. And so I went in. That's the guy who said, Adwa? He said, you come to ask me, Adwa, where were you all this time? I think it's the best message for Ethiopian young people who believe, crazy today and thinking they will do something serious tomorrow. It was a lesson for me. So I made it my first voiceover, is that Adwa thing. I found a very important Ethiopian actor to read it. I wrote from what he said, including my own impression of what he was saying to me. But throughout also the music, the children's song, all that is really part of the folkloric journey. And for me, I don't like to just make film without the cultural context. I would think that the location speaks, the mountain speaks, the structures that are still there speak, the road speaks.
Thank you for sharing that story. With that being said, those were the questions that I had prepared. I would like to open up the questions to the audience. I'll go pass this mic to somebody in the audience.
Thank you. I'm super curious to hear, how was Adwa received in Ethiopia? Like,
Can you come back again?
What's been the reception of Adwa in Ethiopia? Like, did you have a premiere there? Like, what?
Oh, you mean the film?
Yes.
Uh-huh. Yes, I did. I tried. I rented a theater like independent filmmaker, but it's very bureaucratic. It didn't show the way I wanted to show. I'm not encouraged. My film's opening in Ethiopia. I'm not encouraged. It's not. I want high school, university students to watch it. I wanted to engage them because I don't want them to be like me, not know their history, and live fantasizing they're just proto-Americans or something. And so it was difficult. But the elite in Ethiopia, I'm making now. The film I'm finishing now is almost 30 years now, and it's in 5 parts. But I'm imagining young Ethiopians in the future. The contemporary Ethiopians are not my audiences, because they have so much petty, elitist notion of being itself. The very idea of being is completely reduced into simplistic. Forget reflecting these dinosaurs. We've miniaturized humanity itself in religious terms, in cultural terms, in modernization, false modernization sense. We have pettied ours, really. We look bad, in my view. And my film will be confusing for them, because I am insisting on ordinary people telling history. Some of them will even ask me, you let peasants talk about this history? And I say, they remember better than you, And so, they also want Europeans to sanction, they asked me why didn't I have this fixture Ethiopian professor, British professors in London when it showed Ethiopian guy got up, said, how come you don't have so-and-so? I told him, I'm not like my father was a historian. I don't start my history utterance by white people. My father is a history. historian. He writes books. So white people are not the first, my immediate, although when I was colonized, I too was in that state. So I'm not satisfied. I opened Teza there, Harvest, the films I've made. The audience, it's good reaction. Whenever I showed it at the university, I had a good interaction. But in general, the elite's priority in Ethiopia is completely petty. Petty. Has nothing to do about even seeing itself as a history maker. It's not even the fight. And so they will reduce my film into their own ethnic division. And I don't like that. As far as I'm concerned, we have a history. All of us participated in this history. All of us have vitamins to get out of this history, if we look at that. But it's very difficult. So I don't know how to tell you. Part of my work is itself exiled. It's not only me, but my work. I'm looking at Ethiopians yet not born. Leave it there. Otherwise, it's costly to make these movies. But I'm going to leave them, in the archives of the world, and there will be young people. 2, 3, 4 generation skips. They will be there. They will come, and I would say, with all my imperfection, they would forgive me and take what they can out of that.
Thank you.
I've always been curious about this, and I think the movie touched a little bit on this, so I just wanted to get your opinion. But how do you feel that the impact of this war has had on the relationship between Ethiopians and Eritreans in general? I feel like it played a significant role to cause a rift between us, and how do we go about fixing that in the future, especially with the future generation?
Well, it might amaze you, but for me, Eritreans and Ethiopians have more in common to come together than the discommoning thing we find all the time. Because both our elites are bankrupt, in my view, because they don't know how rich we are on each other's complementary history. I understand Eritreans were a colony of Italy, and Italy is going to use them against Ethiopians, the way they did with Somalia, the way they used Libyans, especially in the second part. So Ethiopians, we have to see, there were Ethiopians who collaborated, Ethiopians from proper Ethiopia collaborated with Italians. But when you see the positive part of it, all groups fought together. There are many, it hurts me, my father, he fought with Eritreans against Italy. There's so many legendary history, but Eritreans don't like it, Ethiopians don't like it, to amplify that, because they would prefer to be entrenched in their hateful position of, betrayal or something. It's like a girlfriend betrayal, the way they look at it. It's so miniature, and it's not acceptable to me. I see the larger picture. When I see Eritreans, my father had told me how Eritreans, colonies, in the second one I'm telling you, and I'm going to go back to that one. In the second one, Eritreans who have a lot to lose. For example, in the Second World War, an Eritrean who defected to fight with the Ethiopians would be immediately hanged by the Italians, executed immediately. Ethiopians can try for prisoner of war status, not Eritreans, because they were colonial soldiers to Italy. And the risk it took to see them, there's an Oromo historian telling us how this Eritreans trekked all the way out, escaped from the Italian army, joined the Ethiopians. And the guy you saw, I interviewed in Rome, he's Eritrean. He took me around, he showed me the buried history. He's like in Eritrea fighting, his ancestors fought with Ras Alula at the Dogali battle. And then he was in the Italian army once Italy, kept the colony of Eritrea. In that fight, he was at one point, he told me, he was in a fierce battle with the Ethiopian army, the fighters, in the southern part of Ethiopia. And the Italians were being defeated, and the Italians ordered all the colonial soldiers, Libyans, and some Italian, Somali, and Eritreans, to bury all the white people quickly and go. They told him to bury people. When he said, when we started burying, they came and told us, not the blacks, bury only the whites. And he said, we looked at each other. That's all it needed for these guys. We looked at each other, and that night we escaped and joined the Ethiopian fighters. So to me, my father's book documents Eritrean participation. So for me, I have no, I know Ethiopians where I was born who collaborated. So to me, anti-imperialism war is a handful of people who see the vision, and they're a bigger, larger story that unites Eritreans and Ethiopians. But to me, of course, it has to be, through discussion, discourse, exorcism of this buried animosity, etc. That in all level, economically, culturally, I've gone more to Eritrea than, let's say, Addis. I was more in Asmara when I was a kid because I was Catholic, and I was always in the Komboni College of, Eritreans here. I always went there because the Catholics in the summer, you go there and you get, hand-me-down clothes for your village and come back. So I have no problem. But I understand the problem, but it's with misinformation. Typical African problem, because it's in you I see my problem, because I do not accept who the hell I am. Therefore, everybody who looks like me is my problem. That's race. That's the whole race text. So, to me, for example, Italy and Italian colonialism is more forgiven by Eritrean elites. They harp more with their fight about Ethiopia than Italians, though Italians for 60 years damaged the Eritrean psyche. 60 years, beating them up, killing them, executing them. The longest liberation struggle actually is in Eritrea against Italians. But it's never amplified because it's petty, it's more like my problem with another African becomes more that's usually gloried. But really, for both our countries, Italy was a problem. It divided us, it uprooted us, it displaced our cultural energy, our association, etc. So I don't know if I answered you, but I have no problem. But to me, in Africa, it's easy to see another African being a problem because you could easily predispose him. But the real, diamond owner, white man, will never be taken to court.
Hey, Haile. The question of thinking and working in terms of future generations. One, was it based on resignation in terms of, your encounter with the elites and their pettiness, as you stated, or the other where you're saying, well, this is what what I actually want to know is that when did that happen in terms of work? Was it always the case, or it became an afterthought at some point, where you now understand that clearly that this is for consumption by other generations forthcoming?
Well, it's really observation and study. I'm part of the African film movement. I see the African cinema in Burkina Faso, Senegal. I'm also part of the Pan-African American Black American film. I'm also in that world. I think, in my view, to me, especially Ethiopians, because of this, veneer of independence, we've always allowed mental colonialism to triumph. In terms of, you look at the culture in Addis Ababa, the help of, humanity is judged by the high-rise building you built. I'm human, therefore I have this building. I'm human because I own the new car that is new in Saudi Arabia or America. Materialism as a defining aspect of human existence. This is the Ethiopia now I know, by majority. Of course, there's pockets of rebellion, and there's also misguided rebellion and the ethnic problem, etc. You put all that into it. So for me, the elite that is in power, is a very, it's a disfigured, stillborn class, and it impersonates superficially even the idea of class. It's middle class. There's no, Ethiopian capitalist per se, really a real capitalist. It's a feudal capital without, even I would say the science of capitalism. For capitalism, So to me, I have no film for that Ethiopians. For those Ethiopians, I have no film. Because I would do a pornographic film if I want to go make film for them. I know what they want. I know what they watch. The crap they watch from Turkey, soap opera. These Ethiopians, for me, are occupied, mentally occupied. By what means would I counter-exist in their psyche? You have to be like a billionaire to really get to Ethiopia and to pass all this soap opera crap they consume, the salad bar of garbage they take in. And how can I? I'm an independent filmmaker. I put all my resources into my film. So to me, I just looked at them, I studied, I saw their priority. Ethiopians make me visit a car. Okay, they say, I want you to check my car. And they'll take me out of there was a here, this African filmmakers, Kathy Collins, I showed you, they were, Kathy Collins, a few of us went to a dinner Ethiopian place, and one guy grew up with just grabbed me out of the group. We were talking about cinema, African cinema, da-da-da-da. He grabbed me and he says, Haile, no. I want to show you the new car I bought. And he took me in, and he opened the door. He put me in the seat, and I'm just going along with it. And I sat there, and he said, look at the dasher, he says to me. Look what you can see as you drive. And the people, the African population, they're watching me, and they're saying to Sharik, is Haile trying to buy a car?
So so it became a condition of that production. In other words, this is my encounters with the elite. And
yeah, but let me finish one point. But here, even in America, I found the young Ethiopians, even in Ethiopia, when I had young Ethiopians, I had an amazing, interaction that even helped me grow as a filmmaker. The discussion. So I'm not going to say, but the majority of the status quo that would allow you to show a film or not, bribery. For example, they would say, to get into the theater, you have to do bribe. Okay? And then when you say, why do? And it says, who does the professor think? He thinks he's the only filmmaker in the planet? They write things like this on me. So I'm saying, I do not want that. But I find young Ethiopians, even tonight, young Ethiopians and Eritreans organize this event. For me, that's enough for me. I'm not looking for mass follow-up. I'm not Jay-Z or Beyonce. I'm Haile, the independent filmmaker, and always spending my time in a basement. I do not need the crowd is not what I'm after. I'm after conscious interaction with young people at this point. And then I'm saying, these Ethiopians now are husk. They will pass like everything else. And there will be young people, firebrands. This is Fanon's, I'm a student of Franz Fanon. You know, every generation has a responsibility, some fulfill, some betray. I consider I live in a time of fertilizers. I'm a fertilizer, I'm not revolutionary. I'm just a fertilizer. But in the years, I don't know when, you cannot predict, there will be young people. That I have hope. If not, I wouldn't want so much to resource, so much difficult to do these movies. Because no white folks, no white television is interested in my history. So, for me, I do all this knowing there is a generation that will come because it had happened. Every so and so, a generation appears that's firebrand. And I say to anybody who cares, history makers will come. Have you left a piece of your poem for them to dust and utilize it for their history-making process of forward movement? I have realized this dialectics now. It's become my life. I'm not interested in the contemporary Ethiopian. For me, they're too far gone. I would go to an insane asylum trying to discourse with them.
Oh,
hello, Mr. Garma. My name is Amen. I'm a journalism major at Howard, and I just had a quick question on slavery. And I was just wondering how slavery played a big impact. Were Ethiopians enslaved during this time, and how that made an impact on the progression of the Battle of Adwa, and how that led to victory, or however that was.
I'm not clear. Come again.
I said slavery. How did slavery play an impact in the battle? Was there slavery of Ethiopians, and how did that play an impact of the journey of the victory about?
Well, I would say to you, early from the 1400, even much earlier even than that, through East Africa, Zanzibar and Pembia, Africans were deported all the way to China, Asia, India, and Pakistan. There you have a mix of all East Africans, including Ethiopians. You find Ethiopian communities in India. They're called Habesha. So that kind of slavery has certainly depopulated Africa. Much more in the West Africa when Europeans industrialized slavery to an extent of its magnitude, it has completely depopulated Africans. And this early primitive Arab, I would say Arab slavery, the early one, East Africa, although even in East Africa, the Middle Passage also going from East, it didn't stop with Arab slavery. It went also down south through Cape Town, Durban, back to the Middle Passage. So it's a long history, my brother. But to me, it has affected. The best of the people are actually deported, and as much as the impact it made to East Africa, so it did to Ethiopia as well. But I think in the battle, the absence of Ethiopia, the Ethiopians who were not there did not make a difference, because what people forget is Ethiopians have a very traditional art of war, especially built on mountainous psycho mindset. Ethiopians prefer mountain war. They like to come down from the mountain. They even throw stone is even a major part of their war technique. And then Europeans do not tell you the shout in Ethiopia is not shouting. It is a psychological warfare to bring fear or induce fear from your opponent or your enemy. So all that soundtrack that I try to build is the psychological warfare, part and parcel of the psychological warfare Ethiopians waged to score against the Italians. Even the second time, it was very difficult for Italians with all that tank and poison gas and airplane. It was very hard for them to subdue Ethiopians. Even then, it was 5 years only, 6 years the most. If you take Jimma and Gon Begum, 6 years. They did not stay more than 6 years because Ethiopians went to guerrilla warfare. I think in this new one, that's what I'm trying to deal about. The fact that Ethiopians wanted to repeat Adwa. Haile Selassie wanted Adwa to repeat. But it was a different historical time, a different technological warfare, and many Ethiopians suggested guerrilla warfare. And he did not accept that advice. But soon, the minute in 6 battles, major battles, 7 maybe battles, once Ethiopians were defeated, then they went into guerrilla warfare into bands, like Maroons in the United States or Jamaica. So that is what really brought, again, the psychological defeat and the physical defeat of Italian colonialism in Ethiopia.
Thank you.
Thanks. I have 2 questions. Probably just tailing on the first with kind of like tales of enslavement, but also weaponry, right? Because of course,
Say it again, my sister.
given that the Battle of Adwa was 5 years after the Brussels conference, right, when Europeans decided not to sell rifles and weapons to Africans, right? I'm curious about your take on the implications of that for that conflict, but also I'd love to hear what your experience has been between the 2 films as you were combing through the archives, because you're also looking at the trajectory of film as a medium, but also as a tool of propaganda, right? So what was the challenge then inherent to your second journey over the past 30 years as opposed to the first when you were looking mostly at pictures and paintings?
Okay, well, the first one I'll try because I'm not that fluent on for example, the actual blockade. But I'll tell you, for example, when African Americans wanted to send weapons to Ethiopia in 1935, the president of the United States blocked it. So, but this blocking is earlier happening because Africans, I'm not sure if it's after Adwa, but I think there were also, the other African wars that armament has become a major issue to sell and do not sell issue, and that I'm not very fluent on it, but it's a major issue there. But I also know immediately there were conferences between Italians. In fact, some British people went to Italy and said, let's go now while it's hot. Let's help you and go teach these people a lesson because it's affecting our colonial territory. Even the ones, for example, and just quickly, the ones who came from Sudan, the ones who came from Somalia, the ones who came from with the British Nigeria, etc. They were like watching Ethiopians, and they're saying, "Oh, we're gonna take it there too, where we are from. Why are we here?" So there was a major intersection going on that backfired with the British colonialism, and that's why the British wanted to recolonize Ethiopia. Churchill said, "No, we can't let this. Otherwise, all our colonies will break down. We lose Sudan. Losing Sudan means losing cotton." And so that's one. And the second one, I think, my sister, it is like we Africans in general are not aware of the battle of archive. Okay, whether it's motion picture, even art. There's a very interesting movement to return artifacts. But it goes back to the crazy elite in Africa that does not understand to build archive centers and bring our stolen artifacts. This is like, it's at Howard is a problem. Archiving It's like we lose the battle in archiving. And so the Italians, especially, what happened is the Germans and the Italians are the most self-documented war criminals on the planet. And the superpowers, England, US, and France, took every frame, not every film, every frame of the film, they copied and took to their respective country. This is how they in advance, you know, one runs, sells gun, one does that, one copies. This is what, you gotta like admire these white people. How they do is no joke. We just have to say, God, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this, and then you're making copies of everything when everybody's looking your way on the vanquished people, and you're taking it home and you're going to sell it. The British sell it, the French sell it with brutality. Like they ask you your own ancestors' picture, they ask you $40,000 for 3 minutes of it. And you said, dang, it's unbelievable, surreal. But the defeat comes from this elite, deadbeat elite. That is like, he dresses modern, he drives modern, he flies all over modern, but his head is zero. He doesn't fight for his mother's picture, his great-grandfather's photo, you know. So to me, that is where we lose the battle. And for me, it was the most difficult confrontation to access these footages. You know, when they took the Ethiopian lion, they cut it at Legahar, in front of the train station. They cut it and took it to Rome. And Mussolini and all of them marching saying, we brought this lion here. And put it next to Aksum's obelisk, which they took. They cut Aksum's obelisk. You know, the one, this imitation is better. In the Washington Monument, it's imitation, okay. The potatoes is okay. They cut and took the monument, that same monument, into Rome and planted it next to the Colosseum. So the battle of idea, white people are not playing. It's not only gun, they know how the battle of idea. We lose there. That's why I have no respect for modern Africans, Ethiopians. To me, they're just vegetables. You know, they eat, they live, they die, they pretend they're in love, they pretend they're marrying, they pretend their life is all fako, foko, fako, fako. Sorry, I'm getting crazy, sister. Because to me, it brings my 30 years pain trying to secure my ancestors' picture. Whether we're fighting with white people or against them, they own both footages. And so, that's my answer to you. 30 years is that, fighting to get, there's even footages they have hidden. They executed Ethiopia. My father used to tell me they filmed everything they were doing. And they have it, there's a place, Archive Luce, created by Mussolini. And then there's another Stato Maggiore where the general's crime is present. I couldn't get it there, in fact. I knew some footages of Ethiopian intellectuals that were hanged, thrown over from a plane. All their pictures there. I know, because in history you get a frame. The frame is from film, you know. It's not just a still photo. It's a film. And then if it's from a film, there's a film that exists. That's how I got, for example, when they took the Lion of Judah, put it in Rome, and then I saw they brought the Roman wolf with her baby and put it where the lion was. See what they are like exchanging imperial power, you know. And so I would say in the future, the generation I think has to fight to make archives theirs too, without fee. It will come, that will come. It will be taken at the UN, I know. Even when I'm gonna get this film out, Shurikiana and me are working on petition already to be signed by the new digital world. So young African filmmakers know it can be fought. You know, the Hitler and Mussolini were not stupid. They try to make them, you know, the history is, they were the brilliant of that society. they modernized that world. And you know, Italians, when you go there now, they have nothing to offer you except Mussolini's road he built for them. The housing he gave them is still where they live. Casa Popolare is what they built the same house in Ethiopia too. Casa Popolare, meaning for the people, house for the people. So the Hitler and Mussolini history, what's hidden is the properties, this amazing documentation they conducted. You know, they were not, Mussolini started the Venice Film Festival. They got mad at me because I said he started this festival. They don't want to be reminded, but Mussolini started the festival. And Mussolini said the most powerful weapon in town now is camera, he said. They documented everything. Ethiopians, we're not fighting to get it. And to get it also is not enough to want to fight, but build the archive place, temperature control place, so it can survive for generation to tap and tell the story from their point of view.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Many thoughts as just hearing you talk and narrate just the meaning and the depth of this. To pull this into today's world, what do you think are some lessons from the Battle of Adwa to this moment where obviously everything is going haywire by the hour, and it would appear that there is no thought yet of whether African, Caribbean countries or even folks here thinking about a coordinated response. Like, what can we learn from Adwa that may help folks reconceptualize this moment, as it seems that the entire kind of Western project is crumbling?
Well, I'm not sure it's crumbling, but it's giving in to the Chinese Empire. So the Roman Empire gave it to the American Empire, the American Empire, the Chinese Empire. We Africans are not even ready to really deal with the new Chinese Empire. I wouldn't care about white power anymore. They're dying. They're going down. Look at the fools they have here. That is what's all over Europe. Fools and dumbs and stupids who are tinkering with the most privileged power they have. They're tinkering to bring it down themselves. We're not even helping. You know, there's no, Black Panther movement doing, helping push the system down. They're doing it themselves. We're watching the football. The problem is we are not building alternative existence. They come, they go. What about us? What are we thinking? We would think too much about good and bad white people. Often this is a ping pong game they use to everybody. They always make us watch the good white guy, the bad white guy, All that works is our neck. To me, what are we doing to make our own historical moment, our own historical process? And I think we have to concentrate with that. And Adwa for me is that mentality, making history, being history makers, given the circumstances. So for me, I think Africans, we have to question what we think life is. A ship is going down and we're building in its image. It's no more sustainable life. It's not sustainable anymore. Look at what's happening in Europe and America. It's not sustainable. But we are always coming into a dying system. And then we're going down with it without having eaten good with it. When you think about the environment, they used it so much. Now we are embroiled with saving it even, without having, every white American I know in Texas drives 10 cars. My mother never had a car, the only shoes. But her descendants we have to pay for that. So, to me, environment is the best example. We're going to pay for it equally. But what I don't see is the elite is, instead of reacting to a European system that's going down, I think we should think about what are the kind of world we want to live in. What kind of world should we create? We African people with the best brain, the most armed, mentally armed of the black race is now. The most armed people, mentally speaking, exist now. When you think about the digital knowledge, black people are more armed now, across here to Africa. Yet we imitate and regurgitate white idea of life. We don't propose alternative existence. And so the tragedy is that for me, we have to decide what kind of world we want. And we don't have to ask permission from nobody. And then when the new Chinese empire comes, they will meet a solidified world. And we will not just be passive spectators of their bullshit. Even them, we're not ready. We just try to say, oh, they are our friends, they give us cheese with it. No, this one takes the cheese out. The hell with all of them. What's an African idea? How do we build history? How can we be history makers? That to me is a number one. Even now, the biggest headache I have is black people reacting this stupid guy. To even occupy ourselves for 5 minutes. Forget that, and I'm going to say this and run out because I'll have too many enemies. I don't even join the Kendrick's warfare.
Oh, no, not again.
Bye. Good night.
I'll make sure we get in touch.
Thank you so much to Haile Gerima. Yes, so I want to say thank you to him for answering all of our questions. He is very, very wise. You know, he's doing this for our generation. A lot of people in here are in my generation. So I want to say thank you personally. We have a lot to learn from you. Other than that, I want to say thank you for you guys for coming out, asking amazing questions, making this an amazing event.
Young folks in the audience were present.
That was one of my one objection to the notion that it would only come for generations. Yeah, but yeah, it's a good point.